Good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join today's webinar with Diligent on the subject of crisis management and the Board of Directors. My name is Holly Groom and I'm the Senior Marketing Manager for UK, Ireland and Africa here at Diligent, and today I'm joined by my colleague Michael Haralambous, who's the Director of Marketing here at Diligent in EMEA. Before we get started today, I just have a couple of housekeeping notes to go through with you all. This webinar should last about 30 minutes. We are recording it, and a replay of today's webinar will be sent to everybody that registered within the next 24 hours. So you can feel free to forward this along to any of your colleagues or board members who may not have been able to join us today. If you'd like to ask a question during today's webinar, you can do so via the Ask a Question pane on the right-hand side of your screen at any time. At the end of today's session, we'll answer as many questions as we can, and anything that we don't have time for, we'll come back to you over email afterwards. Finally, we do have one poll today, which we would very much appreciate if you could participate in with us. So moving swiftly on to the reason why you're all here with us today, I'm going to hand you over to Mike.
Thank you, Holly, and good morning, everyone. So why should you listen to Diligent when it comes to crisis management? I think that's a very fair question. Put simply, our understanding of the subject comes from supporting over 140,000 leaders. That's board directors and executives and their support teams in over 70 countries. So today, what we want to do is summarize the experience of these leaders in specifically 3 key areas. What is a good crisis management plan? What's the technical infrastructure you need in order to respond and to manage an organizational crisis? And how a suite of board apps, or more commonly known, board portals, can help boards better manage a crisis. So let's just look at what crisis management means. So if we just look at the definition here on the slide, crisis management is the process by which an organization deals with a major event that threatens to harm the organization, its stakeholders, or the general public. In summary, crisis management is really about enabling the people running the company, the board, and the executive team to have the required information faster than anyone else and to be able to make sure they make key decisions at the right time. Now, I think it's fair to say that every organization is vulnerable to a crisis, and today's world, social media plays a significant role in spreading a story, not just nationally but globally. And in a recent study by Freshfields, Brookhouse and Derringer, they found on average 50% of organizations are not adequately prepared to handle a crisis. And I'd just like to share some key stats with you, from the findings of their report. Nearly 30% of crises spread internationally within just 1 hour. On average, it takes 21 hours before a company is able to issue a meaningful external communication to defend themselves. In 20% of incidents, it's around 48 hours. And nearly 70% of crises spread internationally within just 24 hours, and they reach a staggering 11 countries on average. And 1 year on, 53% of companies had not seen share prices regain from pre-crisis levels. So I think what this demonstrates is the days of playing ostrich, burying your head in the sand, hoping the problem goes away, are simply gone. You can try, but your stakeholders simply will not understand or forgive, because they've seen what's happened with Volkswagen, FIFA, individuals like Lance Armstrong, and most recently and currently Yahoo. So essentially boards and executives and their legal advisors are in a race against time. And essentially what they're trying to do is tackle 2 key aspects of a crisis. The first is the operational side, taking control, investigating it and figuring out what happened, and then taking concrete steps to resolve it. Now the second is the communications aspect, planning quickly, keeping pace with the media and the stakeholders, containing or influencing any news that threatens to damage the company's reputation. And all this needs to be done whilst assessing the legal implications of any decision made. So today, what we want to do is understand some of the questions and the steps boards can take to ensure they're making timely decisions and fulfilling requests and questions from shareholders, regulatory bodies, and all the other stakeholders involved. So let's look at how people are doing it today. We'd like to ask you to all engage in a quick poll. And specifically the question we'd like to ask is, how are your documents currently distributed? Now there are 5 potential answers. The first one is documents are printed and distributed by couriers. PDF and Word documents are distributed via email. Dropbox and SharePoint is used for file or any other file sharing solution, and you may be using a custom developed or in-house tool, or indeed you may be using a board portal. So if I can ask you all to vote for one of these questions, it would be greatly appreciated. So why don't we just give you all a few seconds for all the questions to come in. So I can see around 60% of you have already voted, and that number's increasing. And so we've got 70%. I think we'll probably wait until around 70-75% before we call the vote. That seems to be everybody, so why don't we close the vote there. So let's have a look at the results. So it's very clear that over 64% of you are distributing email via insecure PDF documents. Now, I'd like you to hold on to that stat as we go through the presentation. And what we hope to do today is provide insight on how the way you distribute your board materials, and more importantly, how the board collaborates during a crisis can significantly affect the speed and the quality of response of a crisis. So let's just quickly go through some high-level examples of different types of crisis. Now, the key thing is that many crises are unexpected. And what we have here isn't an exhaustive list, but we find that most crises can fall into the following categories. Financial crisis. So this could be a macroeconomic event or an organization's own internal issue that can affect the well-being, the financial well-being of the company. So an example is the financial crisis of 2008, which affected the UK bank Northern Rock. Northern Rock had invested in the international markets for subprime mortgage debt. As more and more people defaulted on their home loans in the US, the Rock's business collapsed, and that triggered the first bank run in the UK since 1866, because it asked the UK government for assistance, and it ended up being nationalised and then sold to Virgin Money in 2012. So external events really impacted or accelerated a lot of issues, within Northern Rock at that time. Technological crisis. So this could be a technology failure that has disrupted a service to consumers, be it your call centre, or it could be a technical or safety issue. So the most recent example is Samsung, who had the courage to take a huge decision to recall its Galaxy Note 7 smartphone for safety reasons. And its brilliantly clear and fast response has won it plaudits from many PR experts. Cybersecurity, now something we see more and more in the news. So examples could be the hacking of personal consumer information, such as the recent scandal with TalkTalk, or the taking down or hijacking of a company website. Some recent examples include the hacking of CIA Director John Brennan, who was hacked by a team of American and British hackers last year, and essentially the US and UK team of hackers broke into his personal account, stealing information he had forwarded from his CIA work account. And most recently and currently, Yahoo's just admitted that the personal data of 500 million users has been stolen by state-sponsored hackers, and they're currently in the midst of an acquisition by Verizon as well. Other examples, crisis of personnel. So this could be a situation where a senior member of staff sadly dies, and as demonstrated by the very sad loss of the CEO of Total, the French energy giant, in 2014. Other examples could include staff controversy, and I think arguably in its worst form, a video that goes viral very quickly. So in April 2009, 2 Domino's employees uploaded a video to YouTube of themselves doing some disgusting acts in the pizza preparation process. It doesn't make for nice reading, but if you look hard enough, you can find the video on YouTube. And at this time, the world of PR wasn't completely up to speed with how internet culture can take any negative and exaggerate it significantly. So over 1 million people watched this video, and it had a huge impact on Domino's reputation in the US. Now, I could go on, but as we've discussed, there are many different scenarios that could happen across a wide number of areas. But from observations and conversations with our 140,000 customers, there are usually commonalities across most crises. And namely, they're normally unexpected, they require a fast response, there are a lot of events that happen in a very short period of time, and there's a lot of work required by the board sitting in the background and making quick decisions and able to respond to the crisis. So I'd like to share the example of Volkswagen, which is probably the biggest corporate crisis of 2015. One of the world's largest automakers, they were found to have installed a software defeat device that helped cars pass emissions tests. Now, I just want to share with you the critical events that took place between September the 18th, 2015 and September the 25th. That's 8 days. And this is an example of the density and the frequency of events that take place in such a short period of time when a crisis like this happens. So according to some reports, Volkswagen had been aware there could be an issue about a year before the incident happened, but they hadn't taken much action. So on the 18th of September, the authorities decided to go public with their accusations, and this was unexpected. This was a weekend, and so during that weekend, Volkswagen issued a statement indicating they were sorry for the situation that had been caused. A day later, on the 21st of September, the company had lost $15 billion in valuation. A day after that, on the 22nd, there was a further significant decline in the stock value. Now, on this day, the board of Volkswagen had to figure out a way to allocate billions to deal with the situation. They had to recall vehicles, compensate dealers in different parts of the world, and this brought into frame taxation issues across different countries. So it was a very complex situation for them. Now on the 22nd, the CEO took responsibility of the situation and resigned. On the 24th, the EU urged all its 28 member states to investigate the magnitude of the impact in each country. And as a result of that, a number of countries halted the sale of Volkswagen vehicles. On the 25th, 8 days after the scandal broke out, a new CEO was appointed and the US government decided to stop the sale of Volkswagen cars. Now, as you can see, it was a large number of very pretty drastic events in a compressed time frame that had a major impact on the business. So in those days, the board needs to take a lot of actions to understand and respond to the events at hand. In reality, a lot of work went on in the background with the board, the executive team, and their respective legal and communications teams. And this was all aimed at making the right decisions at the right time. So just think about how the board managed to assimilate the vast amounts of information coming into them quickly, how they were able to discuss and collaborate on decisions quickly, vote on decisions, remove access of sensitive board materials to departing CEOs, ensure secure communication between all the key stakeholders. A lot of critical decisions in a very short space of time. So what can organizations do in the event of a crisis? Let's ask ourselves what we mean by crisis management. Now, we have a lot of partners globally, and one of the partners, Housekeeping, we did a webinar with a couple of weeks ago, and they provided 5 questions they normally ask if you're a board member or advising a board in order to understand if they have if they've properly thought through a crisis management plan. So the first question they asked the audience was, is the crisis response a priority? Do you really think of a crisis as something that will or might happen, and do you respond to it or not? That's the first question. If the answer is yes, you go to the second question. Does your board understand its role in the area of crisis management? Do they really know what's required from them if a crisis happens? The role of the board is very different to the management team. In a crisis, the management team will be focused on the technical execution side, and then the board is very much involved on the strategic side of the crisis. Now, the third question was, do we have a plan that takes into account different scenarios? In some plans where you think the CEO will do this and the CFO will do that, well, what happens when the crisis is the loss of the CEO, as proven in 2014 when Total lost their CEO? So you have to have different scenarios and different levels of crisis that are planned for. The fourth question was, is the board equipped to efficiently communicate amongst each other? What we find is that one of the key elements of dealing with success or failure of a crisis is how much information is available and how fast is it shared across all the key stakeholders, and how is it shared amongst those who have to and are accountable for making the large number of correct decisions in a very short space of time. And the last question was, what's the role of each individual board member in the event of a crisis? So what will the chairman be doing and the other board members? What's the CEO going to be doing, and how do you plan for scenarios if one of those key elements is not available so someone else can quickly pick up? Now, a lot of companies have looked into crisis management plan, and I'm sure you have too. And there's a lot of information out there on the best practices and what you're advised to do. So I don't want to focus too much on this part. What I want to focus on is something a lot of companies don't think about: having an infrastructure platform that allows board members to assimilate information quickly and make the decisions to execute these plans efficiently. So let's think of some of the common features of a crisis in the boardroom. Number one, the situation materializes unexpectedly. Decisions are required urgently. Time is short. Urgent demands for information are received. So in a crisis, what does your board need to be? Well, it needs to be prepared. You don't want to think about what you need to do when the crisis has already started. You need to be informed. You want to get a comprehensive image of the situation, including all the information about the crisis. The board needs to be on the same page. You need to get into contact with all the relevant parties, and you need to be decisive. You need to decide on the first measures to take very, very quickly. You need secure communications. What happens if somebody intercepts an email or goes through the bins? Mobile. What if your key decision makers are traveling and in different parts of the world when the crisis unfolds, and you need to respond very, very quickly? But let's really have a look at how you normally distribute information. Now, going back to our poll, 64% of you currently distribute board materials through email via secure PDFs. Now, what we find, most companies actually do this. Question I have for everybody on the phone is, how do you communicate in times of crisis? Just think about it for a moment. Now, if 64% of you are communicating via email and PDFs, what we see here is a mismatch. It's of utmost importance to respond quickly and efficiently because crises often happen and are often won or lost in the first 24 hours. Now, if the CEO and the board are able to respond swiftly and honestly, that can create a real opportunity to show decisive leadership and commitment to values. If they can't, then you're potentially putting the reputation of the organization at risk. So we say we work with 140,000 leaders, and how do they do it? Now, what we find is, in order to boost their communication infrastructure, the leading companies have turned to a more advanced solution for communication and collaboration in today's digital world. And a suite of board apps, or more commonly known as board portals, are increasingly being used by boards across the world. Now, a board portal is simply a service that allows boards to share information and collaborate. It enables secure storage of your documents, used by the boards of directors, and this can include reports, spreadsheets, exhibits for the next board meeting, or even archives from previous meetings. Now, directors can access the resources on their tablets or laptops, and because the files are usually kept up to date by the board secretary, directors can be assured they're always viewing the latest materials wherever they are in the world. Now, permissions can also be set, so particular documents are only accessible to certain individuals, and permissions can be rescinded very, very quickly in the event of an executive departing very quickly. Now, in addition, company secretaries can communicate with directors about updates, logistics, while directors can also use the portal to facilitate their discussions as well. Now, what our customers tell us is that a board portal solution actually does meet the requirements that a crisis is posing on a communication infrastructure. So let's go back and think about the things that are really required for communications during a crisis. So communication needs to be secure and mobile. So with a board portal, number one, your information is encrypted. It's stored on a highly secure external server. So all the authorized users have the material securely delivered through a tablet app or an internet browser on a device of their choosing. So no more PDFs sent through personal email accounts. And anybody who's been watching the news over the last few days can see that, recently Yahoo was hacked and 500 million accounts, account details were stolen. So, I think having a secure mobile solution is extremely important in the event of a crisis. Now, on the same page, the use of a centralized hub for data ensures the latest information is available instantly. And this eliminates challenges in distribution and version control, so you don't have to use couriers that, there's obviously a lag time between getting a courier to receive the information and deliver it to the director. And when you want to make last-minute updates, again, they're instantaneous. Decisive. Some portals enable electronic signatures for written consent. Now, it's extremely important now when there's consensus on a decision, everybody votes on it and the decision is enacted. And a voting feature allows directors to vote wherever they are in the world. Being prepared. A portal can already be loaded with crisis management plans. So previous board and committee minutes, governing documents, directors of contacts, etc. can all be uploaded and notifications can be sent to directors. And then informed. A board portal can also provide a central location for summaries, links to news reports, blog posts, Twitter feeds, and investor commentary, etc. So all the information is at hand and it's available securely and instantaneously. So one very quick word about Diligent as an organization. I could go through the stats, but what I really want to focus on is that we've been providing board portals now for over 15 years, and we have 140,000 board members, executives, and their support teams who've made the transition to digital communication through the Diligent board portal. Now, we provide a service that's known as software as a service. In other words, at the end of every year, customers can elect to stay with us or move on to another way of providing the board portal technology if they wish. And we're delighted to say that over 99% of our customers stay with us year in, year out. And they continue to work with Diligent, and those retention rates really are world-class. So we're very proud of that fact. And I think what that underpins is the satisfaction our users have using our solution on a daily basis. So thank you for listening. I'd like to hand the mic over to Holly and receive any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, so we had a number of questions through. The first one is, thank you for the information. It's great to hear about the solution, but how can you actually facilitate people as human beings making decisions faster?
Yeah, I mean, great question and one we get asked a lot. So as we've discussed, so crisis management is all about making sure the board have the right information and are able to act on that information quickly. So the right decisions are made at the right time. So if you look at a board portal, let's talk about making sure the information's available. You get instant access to the most up-to-date information. Sensitive documents can be delivered anytime to board members wherever they're traveling. The experience is very similar to actually just using a normal board book. So it mimics the processes that a board director would use when flipping through pages. Now, also meeting materials, communication, policies, archives, they can all be accessed. So a director can very quickly go back to previous meetings and understand what decisions were made and the outcomes of those decisions. Other things, when a crisis happens, you need to act quickly. So urgent communications can be transmitted securely during a very time-limited crisis. So if you look at it in terms of the board app, we're able to distribute documents very quickly, but we're also able, through our secure messenger app, notify board directors and their support teams of a crisis and demand to put crisis management plans into action very quickly. And then when new material or new information is made available, again, alerts can be sent out to directors so everybody's checking as quickly as possible, so everybody's making quick decisions to be able to contain the crisis.
Great. And how would you recommend that people on the phone keep directors up to date on the crisis management plans in general? Is it simply a case of having crisis management as a standing item on regular board meetings, for example?
So this question was asked to us a couple of weeks ago when we were doing a previous event, actually. So yeah, and I would agree with you. So standing an agenda on board meetings keeps everybody up to speed and to date, but also on an ongoing basis, the board portal has a resource center, so you can upload the plans and the processes, so board members have the latest information that they can read on and keep up to date on the actual crisis management plan and process. You can also have a directory of the key resources as well, and all the latest board, legal and communication teams can also get access to this as well. Lastly, again, notification and changes and updates of these board materials can be communicated to board directors. So if there's a change in the materials or the process, those notifications can make it through to the directors themselves.
Great, thank you. We're always keen to give everybody back a few minutes of their day, so we'll move on to the final slide of today. Obviously you would have seen Mike's email address on the screen just there, so please do feel free to contact Michael directly if you do have any further questions for him. But if you would like to learn more about Diligent, whether it's crisis management or any other information about secure communication and collaboration, you can contact us at info@diligent.com. Alternatively, you can visit our website www.diligent.com, and there you will find lots of different resources from white papers on board portal adoption, and lots of different case studies from existing customers, and there is also the option to schedule a demonstration. As I said right at the start of today's presentation, we are recording it, so as soon as we have the recording ready to go, we'll send that out to you. All that remains for me to say is, on behalf of Mike and I, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you found the webinar informative. Have a lovely day, everyone, and thank you very much.